Hello everyone, and welcome to Cloud World. And this is the first series of videos that we are going to be tackling. So for the first series, we are going to be working on the Azure series, and we are going to be talking about mostly Kubernetes. So what are you going to expect from this first series of videos? So we are going to be working with Kubernetes cluster. This is going to be the main technology that we are going to be using for exploring the Azure side. So initially we are going to be creating a cluster using the Azure CLI. We are going to make a basic configuration using the same as well. As an initial configuration, we are going to cover something that is known as managed identities, some other terminology from the Azure world. And we are going to enable the OIDC issuer, which is going to be very helpful later into the future. Very close feature. So after that, we are going to be creating an Azure Container Registry, also known as ACR in the industry, also using the CLI. From there, we are going to be using any We are going to be using the .NET tools in order to create an API. We are not going to do initially any coding. We are just going to be creating a sample application. Working together with the ACR, we are going to deploy this new image into it. So we will see things like how to log in into the ACR, how to push an image to it. And then in the next session, we are going to be working the two things together. So we will have the ACR and we will have the Azure Kubernetes Services, also known as AKS. So we will be creating a couple of YAML files which belong to the Kubernetes world. We are going to create a service to expose the new API that we created on the previous step. We are going to be connecting the AKS cluster with the ACR. And we are going to use the YAML files in order to create a deployment and a service deployment into the AKX. After that, we are going to be exploring the deployment and see how it works after we apply the initial deployment. On the next part, we are going to be covering another service. There is going to be the Azure Service Bus. We are going to then again, using the CLI to create this resource, explore a couple of options that we can have when we create a service bus, and we are going to be deploying this resource into the Azure side. Now having our service bus, we are going to be modifying our source code that we created in one of the previous sessions, and we are going to be writing code in order to integrate with service bus. So we are going to be sending those messages that we want into the service bus. We are going to dial back a little bit into the managed identity and also into permissions, and we are going to explore the option on how to execute the service bus locally using our Azure account, and also after that how to set up the proper permission using the managed identity which we created previously. Then using the same ACR that we published previously, we are going to make a new version of it. We are going to be redeploying that into the ACR, and then again redeploying the resources into the Azure cluster, and we are going to mix together all those things, including the permissions from the managed identity into the AKS cluster. On the next session, we are going to be working in background services. We are going to go into the next step. So initially, we are writing messages into service bus. In this session, we are going to be creating a background service which is going to consume those services, and we are going to follow the same thing. We are going to deploy the image into the ACR. We are going to be creating the YAML files, and after that, we are going to be deploying this background service into the AKS cluster, which is going to consume our messages, and we are going to do a live testing of those resources. After that, we are going to be making the initial steps to work with Azure Functions. We are going to explore the Azure Functions tools that we have available, and we are also be creating the Azure Function definition into the CLI. After that, we are going to be deploying a very basic Azure function using also the Azure Functions tools, which is going to be an HTTP trigger, and we are going to make some testing of it. Then we are going to be modifying the Azure function, but instead of being an HTTP trigger, we are going to be reacting into a service bus trigger. So when a new message gets to be added into the service bus, we are going to be using this Azure function to replace the background service and explore another option to process our messages. So we will be deleting the old processor from the AKS cluster just to keep functionality updated, and we are going to making the required modifications to the Azure function. We are going to be deploying this one, and we are going to do a retest of the consuming of messages between the deployment in AKS, the service bus, and the consuming of messages using this Azure function. So for this first series, and very likely for the close future, you are going to need some basic tools. So you will need at least to have Docker, Portman, or Rancher, or any similar tool that allow you to build container images that match the standard, and also you have the capability to connect to external resources like the container registry in Azure in order to send those images into it. You will also require any coding tool, so I will leave up to you into this flavor. You can use Visual Studio, you have the proper licensing, or you can use the community edition if you are an individual developer or a small company, or if you want to use a Visual Studio Code and you want to use the CLI or maybe any other custom ID, that's fine. On my end, I will be using the JetBrains tool, using in this case Writer, in order to make all the coding and all the changes that we are going to see. You will need the Azure CLI, you will need the Azure Function CLI, and also you will need an Azure account in order to create all the resources that we will need for this series. Check the comments in the description of the video. I'm going to drop some of the links that will help you out to install the Azure CLI, the Azure Functions, and set up the Azure account. For this series, I will expect you as a developer will have the basic knowledge in .NET and basic knowledge at least on one of the cloud providers or most popular cloud providers like AWS, Azure, or GCP. That is going to help you out to consume and understand most of this content. But I will be trying to do everything from scratch. We are going to do a follow-up. So even if you are a basic developer, you will be able to follow up and learn from this. So welcome to the first session, and I hope this series of videos become something pretty fruitful for you. My name is Santiago Arango, and welcome again to these sessions.